Hey, what's happening? This is Dodge and Fuski for tutorial number 10. Now with a new camera angle.
Slightly higher.
Yeah, we've moved it. There's something in the way, so we had to move the camera. Anyway, today we're doing it on remixing and to a certain extent on bootlegging as well. We're going to kind of break it down to two parts. First of all, we're going to look at the remix that we did of Rave Review by Schism. Chris, who did a lot of the vocal work on that, is going to kind of run through
just how tricks that I used. Yeah,
stuff that he did, and we're going to kind of explain kind of ideas of how you can sort of do a remix, and if you say you want to use like an original part, how you can make it fresh but kind of keep the vibe of the original going. And then the second half, I think I'm going to just give some more general tips on remixing, and also if you want to, if you're not a kind of a professional producer and you're only at the point where you can really bootleg stuff, just tips on like because we did that as well at some point, like things like Quetstep, how you can just make bootlegs and rip stuff. Anyway, without further ado, I guess it's up for Chris to swap places and take the computer. So, convenient.
Right. Basically, we're going to be looking at, like you said, Rave Review, and I'm just going to go over essentially just the main vocal sample in it, which is the Henry Rollins out of some comedy thing he did. Obviously with this, the tune itself doesn't really use that much out of the original, and it's mostly the vocal samples are the main thing that get used in the track that are identifiable from the original. Key with remixes is it's obviously got to have something of the original in it, otherwise it would just be a totally new tune.
Yeah.
With this one, like I say, it's mostly the vocal sample that's the identifiable bit, and the "fuck that's so good" before the drop is like the thing that people always remember.
This is the thing with remixing, is you don't have to like make it sound like the original tune. I mean, it's good to keep the essence in there, but there's so many ways you can keep the essence in. And like, if there's a strong vocal in the original tune, then vocals are probably the easiest way to keep the vibe of the original going to a certain extent.
Yeah, and with vocals you can a vocal is sung in a particular way, but it can, this isn't a sung vocal, this is a spoken word one, but it gives you room to change chords and stuff and add your own style in it when you're using vocals, whereas if you're using the melody from the original tune, obviously it doesn't really give you much to change because you're using the original melody. So yeah, vocals are always a good place to go when you're doing a remix.
Definitely. But before Chris gets started, if you haven't heard the original tune, you need to really, otherwise a lot of this might not make sense. So go on YouTube and look up Schism Rave Review, and then you'll see what we've done to our remix is also up on UKF.
Yeah.
Anyway, Chris.
Cool. Now what I'm going to do, just so you can get it in context, is just play the original unedited vocal. I might just play a bit of it due to time constraints, but this is the original vocal.
I don't know which came first.
Actually, that's not.
Oh, Chris, you haven't prepared your project.
I have, hang on, there we go. I'll just do it this way. I thought I had prepared it.
Bear with us.
Standard, not having a good day.
I don't know which came first, shitty rave music or the drugs.
Even that's affected. So, and you get the rough idea that that's the vocal I'm talking about. Now, there's not a lot you can do with a spoken word, so I kind of just thought, well, I'll fuck around with it a little bit. He's talking about rave and drugs, so just essentially make it sound a bit more trippy was the kind of thing that I thought to do. One little edit I did before it comes in is I chopped, it's dead simple, chopped the very beginning of the vocal here, just did a little stutter in it with a cheap tacky filter that comes in Cubase just to go with a delay on it, and that gives it a nice lead in.
Play that in context with the vocals, so they know what you mean.
Yeah.
If you don't understand which bit we're referring to, listen to the actual remix on YouTube and you'll get more.
Yeah. See, and you almost don't notice it, but it gives it a nice sort of swoosh to announce the vocals coming.
Just a bit of polish just to make it.
Yeah. Now the first thing I chose to do, I'm going to be talking about Cubase specific technique here because I don't know how it's done on other sequences, but it's I took the vocal, and Cubase has quite a cool little function in the pitch shift menu. I'm sure there's various plugins that can achieve the same thing. Now you have the envelope mode, and what you can do is there's the different pitch shift modes. Now you can have it so it literally changes the pitch, so it goes from squeaky down to like low pitch. There's also a thing called a formant mode, and I don't fully understand what formant, how it exactly works, but it's essentially changing the tonality of the voice as opposed to the pitch.
It's another example of Dodge and Fuski ethos there. Fuck the science, make noise. It doesn't matter if you don't know what it is.
Exactly. So it's got
it sounds like.
It's got a couple of formant modes here. So I'm guessing that's the one I use. I set the range to 12, so it's essentially doing 12 semitones of it starting and going down, and you'll hear the effect gradually as the vocal goes on this one.
I don't know which came first, shitty rave music or the drugs. I wonder if it was just these non-music fuckheads who were, sitting in their house one day and they dicked around on a Macintosh.
So with that, you can it just makes it sound a bit weird, whilst you can still hear the words, and it's not like it's going down. It sounds like it's going down in pitch, but it's actually just the formant changing.
Yeah. So I mean, if this is an original track, this would be quite a weird thing to do. Yeah. But because it's a remix, we didn't just want to plonk the original vocal in the breakdown. Go, that'll do. Yeah. We just kind of wanted to make it a bit more.
Yeah. So, and a key thing, retaining. You can still hear what it says, but just adding our own kind of little character stamp on it.
Bear in mind that this is quite specifically what we did with Revian. This is like how to do a remix. But we just wanted to give you some ideas that are a bit more outside the box. I'll get some more general tips later.
And this one here, the one below, it's just the same effect but done to a more extreme and just stereo spread. So when they played it, I'll just play you this one, a little bit of it.
I don't know which came first. Shitty rave music.
So that's a much more like extreme version of it.
I wonder if it was just these.
And then obviously in combination, they just work quite well together, doing quite a cool sound.
Which came first, shitty rave music or the drugs?
So you get the idea with that.
It sounds quite unhuman. Yeah. Another thing, quite a few people asked what we meant by spread in the last tutorial, so in case you haven't read up the feedback on that, we mean how wide it is. So you get these like stereo widener plugins, and there's one built into Cubase. I think most sequencers probably have some kind of stereo widener, or you can download one, Waves do one.
But you can see on the screen here, I just opened it up, and it's here. This is as simple as it comes. There's a width there, so when that's at 0, it's playing in the middle.
It's mono.
And when it's fully wide, it's going to add a stereo effect. Basically, it delays the channels so that they're playing different times to each other, giving you a stereo effect.
It just makes stuff sound bigger. So if you've got something, if your mix is sounding a bit flat, try it on higher. Don't use it on low end elements, but try it on high end elements like pads and sort of white noise, sort of noises, hi hats, leads, stuff. It just makes stuff sound bigger.
Yeah, and wider. So one other quick thing I want to do, I'm just going to go over these very briefly, I chose the word drugs here to emphasise because it's drugs, so I thought, fuck it, might as well make it sound a bit weird. Used a great delay plugin by Waves, and this has got a function on it. Again, this is all going to be plugin specific. I'm just telling you what I've done with what I've used, basically. There's a modulation function so that you can hear it on the word. It's delayed, but the delay goes up and down in pitch just to make it, again, sound a bit more trippy. Just to emphasise that word, it was a creative choice, and again, this is very specific to this track, but that was just a little thing I did there. Now, the other bits that I wanted to show was an original noise that came with the track. Actually, no, first thing, the last vocal thing I want to show you, actually, was I took two words, rave music and drugs, out of the original thing and used the built-in Cubase, whatever it's called, Vari Audio, which is like Melodyne. Again, this is something you have to look up in your own time.
It lets you treat audio, as long as it's monophonic, like it's MIDI, so you can just move notes up and down on a grid like the MIDI notes.
Yeah, so what I've done is I took the notes and just shifted them way down, and what it does is it basically gives quite a robotic sound to the voice. Like that, and that's used in the intro, and that's just again to give the track an identifier to
style.
As the intro. People kind of, if it's a remix, you're going to want to hear a nod of the original track, so people can go, oh, you kind of when it's mixing in, they can kind of recognise it. So that was a little trick that we use in remixes to give a little element of the track in the intro. So when it's being mixed, people go, oh, it's that track.
Yeah, that's really important, I think.
Yeah. Now, the only other actual original part used in this remix, really, of any note, is just used in the intro and probably in the B section here, is the stab. Now, this is just one little snippet of the original stab out of the original track. Just filtering in. So you go, I mean that's dead simple, but again that's the same idea, same principle, using a little bit of the original in the intro just to kind of nod to it.
Yeah, and he's just automated a low pass filter, so it also gives it some movement in the intro, and it's just like a little kind of vibe of the original, while not just copying, not just like copying, pasting it and changing the drums or something.
And like pretty much lastly, the last thing I want to say was the idea of replacing, because in the original track it goes into in the breakdown, it goes into quite a original. What's it sampled from? That the dun 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 dun.
Vamp.
Yeah, it's called a vamp. It's a vamp song. But anyway, we chose to actually change that out and put an original thing in, but.
That's for a couple of reasons. That's
Yeah.
kind of like trying not to get sued and too much by too many people.
Yeah.
And just to kind of make it a bit more us.
Yeah. So what I did is it's an old school sound, and so rather than just using that, I chose to create my own sort of old school sound using primarily Nexus by the looks of it.
Nexus.
And giving it that kind of it's a modern old school sound, you could say. So it's that's it filtering in there. Hang on, I'll just wait on to drop. So it's like essentially a fixed chord just playing down, down, down. So it's similar to the original, but it's kind of again it's nodding to the original.
So it's one of those presets where you play one note and it like plays a chord, and if you play certain notes, they sound like
Here we go.
But if the keyboard on, so you can see.
So it's So it's like a fixed chord.
So it sounds like the Prodigy or something like that. It's that old school rave thing. There's loads of presets like that in like Silence, Nexus, all that kind of shit. And you can just layer them up.
They're very cool sounds, and it's nice to use those old sounds in a modern context. So I mean that was another creative choice, and I think the key with remixes is retain the original vibe, but completely. You just got to put your own stamp on it, and take cues from the original track, but reinterpret them, and like. Maybe I could quickly. I think
to be honest, we should get on to just general tips now because we're running out of time.
Fair enough.
And to everyone that keeps saying get a longer account, blah blah blah. I don't think that's unlocked yet. I don't know. But as soon as we can start doing longer tutorials and YouTube, we've got enough subscribers or whatever it is that we require. We'll start making longer ones, I promise. Okay, so more general remix tips and some bootleg tips. Now, when we used to make bootlegs, there's two ways of kind of doing that. Obviously, the difference in a remix and a bootleg, for those that you don't know, a remix is like an officially sanctioned remix that you've been asked to do by the artist, label, etc. When their release comes out, you do a remix on it. So they'll send you the stems. So that'll be like bits that they've bounced out, so like the audio from like the vocal, maybe like a bit of the synth, some of the drums, stuff like that. They'll sort of solo and bounce out parts of their tune, and you can use them to make a remix. Now, for those of you that don't do this for a living. People that do it for a living won't need telling this, but for those of you that don't do it for a living, bootlegging is the way a lot of people get into so-called remixing, and that's generally either you get an a cappella, which you can search on Google and find for most big tunes, or you can kind of just
a cappella being the vocal only of the track.
Yeah, just the vocal, or you can just rip bits out of tunes cleverly. Now, obviously, if you're going to do that, rip bits where they don't have drums and try, just find a bit that you can kind of just like chop up. Like Greta Step, for example, is a good one. We used an a cappella, but also chopped bits where there weren't any instrumentation. One really good tip that I remember Chris teaching me years ago for when you're sampling and trying to take bits out. If you've got like one thing, like a snare drum, which is really intrusive and you want to get rid of it, there's a good technique for removing individual elements reasonably well. Let's get an EQ and set like a kind of, when you're boosting it, set the Q or like the width of it of the thing so it's quite narrow like that, the bit that's pointing, so you get like you just boost a very small amount area and boost it load, and then kind of sweep up and down where that EQ boost is until the snare or whatever thing you're trying to get rid of gets really loud. Then you figured out what frequency that thing is, so all you do then is just duck it. So rather than boosting it like that, just flip it the other way around, and you'll have kind of taken that element out.
And you can do that on multiple points in one particular sample, so you might have the snare or there's some hi-hats and stuff. Find boost to an extreme to find the sweet spot essentially of where it is, and then as Dodge says, just do the opposite, just bring it right down so you have complete gain reduction on it, and you've just notched out a very tiny little frequency spectrum. If it's a vocal, it generally won't affect the vocal because they happen in a quite relatively small area, but for other bits of the track you can get rid of them. And one other thing that can work and can't work, again, is a little bit more complex, but you can get things called mid and side processing where you can, there's one called center stereo which we use, and basically it gives you the ability to whatever sounds in the middle, retain the middle sound and get rid of what's on the side.
So anything that's just mono you can keep, so you could drop the side. So say the vocals generally just mono in a pop tune, but all the instruments panned, you could drop them down and get a lot more vocal. Anyway, we'd love to go on loads of tips. Unfortunately there's just not really enough time to cover anything, so I hope you learned some kind of insight a little bit on how we do remixes.
There's nothing to say we won't really go back and cover
I think
stuff.
We could easily do at least 2 tutorials on this, so if there's specific areas you want covering, hit us up with feedback please on response to this and what you're interested in covered. Don't forget to subscribe. For those that ask when the next one comes up, it's always the beginning of every month without fail, and we'll see you next time.
Alright.
Cheers.
How many minutes was that?